So I've been making a couple of videos about Sam Wilson Captain America lately because people need to be reminded and educated about the nuance of a black man donning the mantle of Captain America. And I got a pretty interesting take in the comment section of one of those videos. And this young man basically says, John Walker got played dirty, not gonna lie. To which I responded, how? Because, you know, I love conversation. I love to hear other people's perspective and opinions about things. And he says, trying to make him a bad guy in the first place was odd for this version. Using him as a jobber to make Sam look better, they should have used the villain to do that. Now, this is a very interesting take. It's because I'm very curious as to how you came to that conclusion. Because in moments like these, I truly believe that, like, some people are not watching the same show. And I don't mean that as an insult. And, oh, by the way, I'm not coming after this dude, okay? This is just, again, just conversation. Like I said before, I'm genuinely curious of how you got to that conclusion because I'm gonna have to say you're wrong. Now, for starters, I wanna start with the last comment you made about the villain. Now, the common misconception is that antagonists and villains are synonymous with each other, which is not the case at all. Just because you are the protagonist of a story, that doesn't mean you are a villain. Now, the terrorist group that was in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show, I forgot their name, my apologies, but they were operating out of retaliation for a nation that treated their people poorly. That's not being a villain, that's being human. Now, number two, I want to address the fact that you said they made John Walker to look like the bad guy in order to make Sam look better. That is just 100% false. Because the show literally starts off with Sam Wilson giving up the mantle back to the US government. Long story short, he said the impact that Steve Rogers had on America is too big of a shoe for me to fill. So he was basically just operating as the Falcon for the first half of the show. And the reason why he did that is because he knew America didn't want him to be Captain America. So if he's not Captain America, why would the US government try to make him look good when they didn't want him to be Captain America to begin with? So like, you see how your logic doesn't make sense? Lastly, I want to talk about John Walker as a character because the audience and or the characters within the show didn't make John Walker out to be a bad guy. He became a bad guy all on his own. The reason why that he became, quote unquote, the bad guy or was perceived as the bad guy is because the US government kind of didn't make him seem like the bad guy. They just kind of turned his back on him, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, John Walker became the bad guys because he basically followed the wrong path and fell down the super patriotic pipeline that, you know, the US government has set in place for the American people. And the reason why it was so easy for him to fall down that pipeline is because he's a straight white male who is super patriotic for his nation and who has served the nation. So the US government, being the US government, they didn't understand what the actual meaning of being Captain America is. So when they passed down the mantle to John Walker, there was no foundation to reference. And that's why Sam was the only one to truly understand what it is to be Captain America, because he was fighting alongside one of the OG Captain America, Steve Rogers himself. So he had Steve Rogers as a foundation to reference to understand what it is to be Captain America. But John Walker did not have any foundation, he didn't have any reference, and more importantly, he didn't have any guidance. So the only reference, if he had any, of Captain America that he had was the one that the US government fed to him. And the image of Captain America that the US fed to him was wrong. Now, there's a point in time where John Walker ends up taking the life of an innocent person in broad daylight in front of the public. And rightfully so, he's brought to court for it, for a hearing. Now, when the US government was just like, hey, listen, you need to take accountability for your actions. And instead of taking accountability and receiving constructive criticism, he basically decides to crash out in front of court. And this is where he becomes the bad guy. So instead of reflecting upon what he did was wrong, he instead was so addicted to being Captain America that he basically used that addiction of being Captain America to basically tell the entire world, like, yo, I killed this person for you guys. I killed this person for your protection. Basically lying to himself because it's fueled by his delusion. So again, I promise you, no one was trying to make him seem like the bad guy. He did that all on his own.